Hello, and welcome to Talk D93, Community Consolidated School District 93's podcast, hosted by me, Superintendent Dr. David Hill. In it, I sit down from time to time with key figures who impact our district to have conversations about specific CCSD 93 programs, services, roles, events, history, and more. Today is a very special episode because the first time we're recording a conversation with District 93 students. I'm here with Jessie, who is a 6th grade student from J Stream, and Gianna, who's an 8th grader from Stratford, to discuss their remote learning experiences. Jessie actually took the initiative to contact me directly about this idea after learning that we have a podcast. I agreed it was a terrific concept to bring students in for this discussion. Principal Dawson suggested Gianna as a great counterpoint to represent the student voice from Stratford. We know the entire pandemic has not been easy on any segment of CCSD 93's community, and today we focus on students. We hope to acknowledge their experiences while finding out what has worked well and what opportunities they see for improvement. Jessie and Gianna, thank you so very much for taking time to join me with this discussion.
Thank you for letting me be here. I think it's cool to that I can have the idea to be on a podcast.
Thank you. Gianna?
Thank you guys for inviting me and taking the time to reach out and plan and coordinate this whole entire thing. It's really cool how it's all set up and perfectly social distance and everything.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have a few questions we're going to go over today, and I'm going to start with Gianna with the first question. But before we get into remote learning, I want to give you the opportunity to help me and other adults like me to understand how the pandemic has affected your life as a young person. Can you describe what has changed for you since the pandemic, and generally, how you feel it has impacted you?
Well, me and my family, we had to come up with a new sort of normal because everything has changed for us. I've changed schools, I've changed house, I've lost a lot of friends over the pandemic, and normal things like our family vacation yearly, that was canceled. So we sort of settled into this new normal of just being at home and everyone just being in their own room separate. Finally, when we moved, we integrated to an even newer normal where we're more together, even when our house is a little bigger and we're more apart. It just brought us closer together.
Oh, thank you. Jessie, same question to you. Can you describe what has changed for you since the pandemic and generally how you feel it has impacted you?
It may have been nice that now I can no longer have a sort of long trip to the school and waking up early. I'm able to wake up a little later so I can more or less sleep in. But the problem is I don't get to really see people anymore, and since I'm sure that a lot of people don't like talking on the phone either or FaceTiming as much as seeing people in person, so I haven't really been able to see people and talk to people as much. It has been a lot more isolated, and I do want to get out of the house for my family, but at least there's the plus of my pets.
Yes, this certainly has been hard on everybody, right? Obviously, school has changed drastically as a result of this pandemic. Can you share with me any positives you have found to remote learning? Jessie?
Well, like I said before, waking up later, but it's also a little more nicer because I don't exactly have to be sitting in a uncomfortable chair all day. And then there's the fact how I can be a little more independent in my learning, and that's pretty much what I'm a little better at.
Gianna, can you share with me some positives you have found to remote learning?
I found Core Connect the last 45 minutes at the end of the day to be really useful, especially in some times where I just don't focus during class because I just zone out. Because I'm at my house, I just all of a sudden just blank screen every now and then, and I just miss information. So it's really nice that teachers have that open window to discuss with students some things I might have missed or help them connect after school, and sometimes there's other students there, which is kind of nice because I don't really know many people.
Okay. Jessie, any other thoughts on the positives you had with remote learning?
I can also have the ability to, since my pantry is right next to it, I have the ability to grab a snack anytime I want.
Well, snacks are good, right?
Yeah.
We need to get some more snacks here at the district office for some of us. So, Gianna, what are some of the strategies that your teachers use that help you feel engaged with learning despite not being in the building and being remote?
I feel like every student has probably found Kahoot probably the best part of online learning because even though it's an online game, we can all still play together. I feel like every time a student hears the word Kahoot, their focus immediately reverts back to the teacher. It's like some sort of magic spell it puts all the students under. It's like the perfect thing to get all students back and engaged, and it always works.
So I appreciate you saying that. So for our listeners out there who don't have an educational background, when they hear the word game, they don't understand exactly how that might tie into education. Can you explain a little bit how Kahoot works and why you think it's so valuable for our students during remote learning?
Kahoot is an online game. It's not more of a single player. It's more of an interactive game show type game where there's 4 questions and 4 answers and 1 question. So it's multiple select. So students have to think out with a time limit what answer is the correct one, and there's points based on correct answers and time spent deliberating.
Okay. So would you say Kahoot's kind of a fun way to learn?
It's always been a fun way to learn. Even in a school setting, it's fun, and having it still in a remote setting and being able to screen share it has been really fun, especially for students.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing. Jessie, how about you? What are some strategies that your teachers have used to help you feel engaged with learning despite being at home?
Well, my teachers try to make it class as fun as possible, like Gianna said, Kahoots, or any other game that they can find. For example, they take breaks between all sorts of schoolwork, even if we're doing homework once we're done.
Gianna had mentioned in her conversation that the core connect time was something that she found valuable to her. Do you feel like it's valuable to you, that time at the end of the day for your teachers to kind of connect with you?
Well, not really. I don't use that time as much, even though my parents want to, but I try to get stuff done in class as much as possible.
Okay. So for you, it's a little different need than maybe some other students. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Jessie, do you feel like you're able to have social interactions with your peers through small or large group work during school?
Sorta. I mean, there are after-school activities, but during school there isn't as much. There are sometimes times where we're separated into groups where we can talk to each other with our assignment, but that doesn't happen much at all.
Okay. You mentioned after-school activities. What are some of the ones that you're doing?
So there's photography club, where there is a teacher who, it's very self-explanatory, but the teacher makes assignments that we have to take photos of, and nature or animals or whatever is around us.
Are you happy that JStream has provided opportunities for after school, even though we're in a fully remote learning environment?
Yeah.
Good, glad. And that's a result of our outstanding staff over there trying to find different ways to connect with children after school. Gianna, how about you? Do you feel like you're able to have social interactions with your peers through small or large group work during school?
During school, not as much as I would have hoped, because we normally keep it in a large group Zoom with a teacher speaking, but when we do split off into teams, I don't feel like many students interact because they don't feel as comfortable talking with other students, especially with their camera on. I feel like having your camera on is kind of looking at yourself in the face, and it kind of makes you a little more self-conscious. And so many students don't really like to turn their cameras on, so there's not a lot of interaction. But like the games before, that's more of when we get our interaction as a whole class.
Okay. You mentioned about cameras and maybe some students not being as comfortable turning their cameras on. Can you think of any way in which we might be able to make it more comfortable for students to turn their cameras on?
Cameras on, it's just you're staring at yourself, and even myself, I just look at the camera and feel a little self-conscious because I feel like I'm always staring at myself when it's on. And some teachers, they've noticed that, especially with 8th grade students who are always very self-conscious and worried about their self-image. And so maybe them in the most uncomfortable of positions may make them look like they're in a grunge area or location, or like they don't really care. And that's not really the image they'd like to put forth, so they turn off their camera so that they don't have to stare at themselves and feel like what they're doing it looks dumb. So many students just choose not to. And the teachers, they do ask to turn it on every now and then, but most of my teachers are respectful in knowing that we are still participating, hopefully, because most students, they just turn on their mic if they need to.
I really appreciate you sharing that perspective, because someone of my age may not have thought that that's what a middle school child is dealing with, because it's been a long time since I've been your guys' age. So thank you very much for sharing that. Jessie, what has been difficult for you in your remote learning experience?
Well, there's the part where it's very cramped, so I can still hear my sibling in the background, and it kind of is hard to pay attention to just a screen in the room. While then there's also my sister, and then there's also the fact that it's kind of hard to stay focused, because you're you're in an environment that isn't exactly the same as a school. You don't have all these schoolish things around you. You're in another room of your house.
That could be very challenging, I could imagine. I'm not someone who I think could do real well working from home, because like you said, there's a lot of other distractions and things that are going on. Gianna, same question to you. What has been difficult for you in your remote learning experience?
For us, having so many devices connected at the same time really slows the Wi-Fi down. So sometimes it takes longer for things to load and you're a little behind the other students, or maybe you're typing and all of a sudden your teacher just all of a sudden mutes and you assume they're just stopped talking. There was one time I was in a class and I didn't notice, because we were in breakout rooms, that I had been kicked from the meeting on accident because of my Wi-Fi, and I sat there and I was ticked absent because I didn't notice I was gone. And so finally, within like the last few minutes of class, I'm like, would she have called us back to the main room by now? And it was really confusing, because I'm like, am I still in the class? Oh no, because I had just been zoned out in my own world.
That certainly is a challenge. Not everyone has the same kind of Wi-Fi capacity at their house, right?
Yeah.
As you may or may not know, there have been some students who don't have really good Wi-Fi in their house, and the district has provided hotspots for them in their homes to help them boost up their signal so they can be connected. Because I can imagine it could be very frustrating trying to learn and all of a sudden finding out that you've been kicked off and then you're not really involved in what's happening. Gianna, do you have any suggestions to improve remote learning? Obviously the hope is that we're going to get students back in our schools as soon as we can, but not knowing exactly when that is right now, what are some suggestions you might think about improving your remote learning experience for you?
I feel like opening student emails, because we have started book clubs for our students, and most of us have social medias and each other added, so we can communicate through there. But some students who don't have that or don't have a phone and that outlet to connect to other students have been a little behind, because student emails and student docs aren't really open in the district. And I feel like for those kinds of situations, they could be monitored in small groups, and it would be easier for student emailing to happen just in those small groups.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that possible suggestion. Jessie, how about you? Suggestions to improve the remote learning experience for you?
One of the problems that I have in class is that there's lots of distractions where there are kids who are being quite annoying, like putting their face close up to the camera or doing just weird and annoying things in front of the camera. And that can be very distracting, and there isn't much being done about it.
So what you're saying is it's happening, the teacher may or may not see it, and if they do, there's not a lot of redirection for that particular child?
Yeah, there's not exactly, because I would see that there's not a nice way to say, please stop, against that much, with them actually doing that.
Yeah. And some of it is, I think, that you as students, it's hard on you as well, not being able to see friends, not being able to interact in hallways, not being able to have lunch together. So maybe some of the students are just, reacting differently than the two of you might, to make them feel a little more connected to what's happening in the school setting. Any other suggestions that we haven't really covered?
On what you were just saying, that is exactly the kind of experience my sister is having right now, because coming to a new school and not being able to be in that setting, and not many students in 6th grade having social media, it's kind of hard for her to meet other students. And we were just discussing this topic over family dinner, and it was making her a little upset, because not many students her age are doing those things where they're just up in the camera being annoying, or they're just not at the camera at all. And so it's hard for her to try and find a student that's just like her, when all of them are either trying to just seek some validation and attention by going at the camera, or they're just not there at all. And so many students I feel like with games and other things like that brings back the attention. I feel like there's more games that could be like more things to interact students. And I feel like small groups don't always work out as well because it's not as monitored. So more large group activities would be fun for students.
You guys seem as though, for the most part, remote learning is going okay for you. Jessie, how are some of your friends handling the remote learning experience? Would they prefer to be remote learning, or would they prefer to be in school?
Well, I know a lot of people would prefer to be in school. I mean, I would, but I don't really want my family to get sick with COVID or anything. So it's kind of hard to actually do stuff with friends. And I haven't really seen people that much. And I know that there are a lot of people who are going out and seeing people. And my family are trying to ignore it, but it's kind of hard to when there's other people who are going out and going and seeing people.
It really is a hard balance to handle, right? The virus out there, and then your guys' educational experience, right? Same question to you, Gianna.
I've been keeping a tight circle with only a few people in it, and so seeing those few people, most of them aren't finding the remote experience as enjoyable or as easy as I am, because school just for me has clicked. That's something that both my parents being educators, it just always clicked. They're always there to make sure it's working for me. So things that don't work, they're always there. But my friends don't have that exact outlet like I do to go right over to their mom and dad and say, hey, can you help me with this math question? So a few of my friends, I've been the one to help be the connector between school and being their friend and being a tutor. And also later this week, I was planning to see one of my friends who wasn't doing as well, and I really want to help them because they were getting quite worried about their grades. So I want to make sure that I'm the best friend I can be, not give them the answers, but help them out.
It's nice to have family to support you through this situation. As you all know, not all of our students have that. So we're trying to provide the supports we can through the district to help our students and their families who are struggling through this very challenging time. This has truly been an enlightening conversation. Jessie and Gianna, thank you so very much for being here and sharing some insight about experiences throughout this very tough year. You've given us a lot to think about and reflect upon. Again, thank you so very much for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me. It was really nice to have you guys reach out and ask for a student perspective. That's not many things most districts would do.
Thank you both very much, and Happy New Year. Talk D93 listeners, please subscribe to Talk D93 on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify, and don't miss a thing from CCS D93 by following us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter at drhilld93. Join us next time for more from CCS D93. Thank you.